depending on how well you've trained yourself to numb, these questions from yesterday's conversation might seem, totally obscure to practice intimacy with your emotions in that way. To investigate, to get curious, to ask these questions. Where can I feel it in my body? What's its texture? Does it have a smell? Does it have a taste? What's its color? All of these questions that we went through. In the beginning, that might just feel totally inaccessible and just totally obscure. And I know that because, it did for me. I walked into yoga rooms and people were sharing these incredible experiences, and I was just like, what the fuck? I can't feel a thing. I had trained myself to both emotionally and physically not feel a thing. I had trained myself really, really well, and that might have been intelligent to survive and cope with my childhood and all the rest of it, but it's ultimately what led me to the depression I suffered for most of my life, because I wasn't allowing feeling to move through my system. And so I literally just unplugged from life. I cut the cord. I cut the cord from life, and I felt dead inside until nothing made any sense anymore and nothing mattered. Because we don't get to pick and choose what we get to feel and what we get to numb. If we're numbing the whole system. And so you'll only experience your pleasure, your joy, your sensuality, your turn on to life in whatever capacity you've been willing to feel your grief, your loneliness, your pain. And this is so important. So I'll say it again. You're only able to experience your pleasure, your joy, your delight, your curiosity, your aliveness to whatever extent you've been willing to feel your pain, your grief, your anger. Because when we numb and when we turn away from those uncomfortable, or we label them negative emotions, we don't just numb that, we numb the whole system. We numb our capacity to be in relationship. We numb our vulnerability. And our vulnerability is our gateway into feeling, into connection. Without vulnerability, there can be no connection. And when we resensitize the system, it's messy because we're resensitizing the whole thing. And what seems to come up first is often not the juicy bits. It's the caged animals, it's the stuff we've been pushing away. And it's the caged, fierce animals that, come raging out first. And they're usually the first that we have to be with and reintegrate back into wholeness. But it's not even to say that we want to resensitize our system just so that we can feel the pleasure, although that is the result. But we will also feel sadness in a way that permeates our whole body. In the way that we want to feel a full body pleasure and a full body delight. When we do this work of yoga or resensitizing, we will also feel a grief that takes over the whole body. And maybe I don't want to say like it takes it over, because if we're merging with it and we can totally lose ourselves in it, that becomes something else. Then we're destabilized. But it's a full-bodied grief. And so we feel all of it more. We don't get to pick and choose. But ultimately, this is the goal. For me, this is the goal of life. To feel it all, to taste it all. To experience the full spectrum of aliveness. Because there really is beauty in all of it. And this is why meditation is so important, because for me, meditation becomes that spacious container that can hold all of this. Because when I was 5 years old, I didn't have the container to hold all of the chaos that was being, that was just whirlwinding all around me in my home or whatever. I couldn't, so I had to make myself small. I had to unplug. There was kind of no other option. But now, there is another way. I have resources to make myself bigger, or to remember my bigness that was always there. You are already the bigness of the universe. This is already your true nature. But of course, we don't experience that in every second of every day. Maybe we've never tasted that experience. But even me kind of suggesting something like that, you might feel a little spark inside, like some kind of recognition that says, that in a way like lights up. Something inside knows this to be true. And that spark of curiosity is, what is kind of what seduces us on this path and in this work. But meditation is so important because we build our vessel so that we can hold more of life, so that we can taste and experience the beauty in all the flavors of aliveness. And tying back into what I was touching upon yesterday, this spiritual practice of tracing every sensation, every feeling down into its roots. It's because in the nucleus of whatever is happening is the one, is the source, is the mystery, is the goddess, whatever you want to call it. And so if we get curious enough about something and we really practice intimacy with whatever is going on, it can all be a gateway into seeing mystery. It can all be a gateway into waking up to life. And it can all be beautiful. Even our grief, even our loneliness. It's so fully itself. And the more fierce the emotion, the more energy is there to be felt, to be experienced. And there's so much beauty in it. It's why we're drawn to art. It's why we're drawn to theatre, to film, to paintings, because it's like, it's the rawness of the human heart, that vulnerability, that sparks something in our soul. You know, there's so much exceptional art that is made from pain. I would argue most of art comes from pain, from loneliness, from despair, because there's so much energy in it. There's so much energy in it. And so it's so creative in that way. And ultimately there are messages in all of it. Not the kind of messages that you might think, like the story that loops, like I'll never be loved, or I'll always be alone, or I'll never be good enough, you know, like all of that. But grief, anger, shame, all of these visitors, they come bearing messages and gifts. It can be messages like pointing you in new directions. You know, maybe you've gone off alignment, maybe you're in an unhealthy relationship, maybe you're not doing your soul's work. Maybe the anxiety that you're feeling is really fuel because something inside is going, look deeper, or look in another direction. You know, sometimes if we're not listening to our intuition and to the little synchronicities and the little messages that come up, if we're ignoring all of it, in the end, our consciousness, reality, whatever, might have to do something drastic to get our attention. You know, like flood our system with anxiety. To just be like, you've gone off piste. Open your eyes. Or come back. You've escaped your, you know, you've been running away from yourself. Come back. You know, it might be, whatever we're experiencing might be so strong because something is trying to get our attention. To say, come back. Look inside. What's truly alive? You know, there's messages in everything that we're experiencing, but it's not the immediate egoic structure, repetitive, conditioned story. So we have to get underneath that and first get into our body. And it might seem obscure at first to ask these questions, so then you just keep asking, keep asking, keep asking, and eventually the body will begin to speak. Just setting the intention to turn in towards yourself, just to keep asking the questions. Eventually the body responds. And I know sometimes it can be overwhelming when we kind of open that Pandora's box. And so in the next video, I will guide you through a practice that is very grounding for the nervous system. So go to the next video for that grounding practice.